Welcome to Business Insight Fredericton. I'm Krista Ross, your host, CEO of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. Today, I'm at the Purrfect Cup with Corey Jennings. Corey, tell me about this interesting business.
Well, so it's not just a business. We also are in the cat rescue business, if you will.
Okay.
I put that in quotes because we don't actually profit from that side of the business, but we are partnered with a few shelters, and we essentially foster their cats and put kind of them on display to increase their chance of being adopted, while also essentially freeing up resource for those shelters so they can tend to the cats that are more needed for care. We're equipped to take kind of the most socialized cats, the ones who are in the best shape, and then we showcase them here, and then let the shelters do, because they have the resource to help the cats who really need the help.
So the main part of the business, however, is actually a cafe. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I wanted to do something that both had potential to generate some profit, because if you're not profitable, you're not going to exist very long, and also give back to the community. So I needed something that keeps people coming back. And I also really like the idea of being a hub where people can connect and generate ideas and reconnect or just enjoy each other's company. So I felt that coffee or tea or just a warm drink kind of complemented that very well, and then it creates that nice flow of people coming in and get exposed to this essentially.
So I feel like this is a unique business model, the Purrfect Cup, a cat cafe. How did you come up with this idea?
Well, probably like most ideas, it kind of gets, there's a saying that someone once told me when it comes to business. They say do R&D, rob and duplicate. It's essentially take an idea and put your own little spin on it. So this was inspired. I had heard about it in Asia. So in I think Japan was actually where it kind of first started. But where I got inspired from was I saw, I can't remember if it was Calgary or Edmonton, but it was somewhere in Alberta. And I just read that and I was like, oh, that's actually a pretty cool idea. So I just put pen to paper, started drawing out a business plan, and eventually it came to be.
So do you love cats? Have cats always been part of your life?
Not specifically cats. I've certainly have grown to have even more appreciation for them as a result of this. Whenever this kind of popped up as an idea, I knew I had to pounce on it because it hit every button. There was the business side of it, the entrepreneur side of it, but there was the animal side of it to help these little critters, find a family.
So how did you stumble upon this great location?
Well, I think it's a great location, but I think that had you looked at this location when I first opened, it would be very easy to be like, well, that'd be difficult because we're in an up and coming area. So when I chose this location, I was really banking on the future. And even now, if you look at Google Maps right now, if you just kind of center on this area, about 50% of the landmass around is just woodlot. But to me, that tells me future opportunity. If I can survive this now, it's success is almost a foregone conclusion at that point.
So do you have clients that come in just for their coffee and aren't really interested in the cats, or is everybody wanting to come and visit with your cats?
So definitely that was actually a struggle at first because we were a cat cafe. That's what everybody knew us as. So everybody assumed I'm going there to see cats, and coffee is just like, if I want a cup of coffee, I'll just have a cup of coffee. But I really wanted to be sure to create two distinct spaces, because I think it's important, not just from a business perspective, but some people want to be able to come and enjoy the cats, but maybe they're allergic, so they can't have direct contact.
Oh, the black cat.
But that's why I want to create that kind of viewing area, so then it's accessible to everybody. You can come have a business meeting if you want. You can actually get work done if you need to without the distraction, but the cats are still there. You can still enjoy them from a distance and still participate effectively in essentially helping them find a home.
So tell me how the cat room works. How many cats are there? How often do they get adopted? Tell me all about it.
So you pay to come into the cat lounge, and when you pay, you get an hour allocated to you. And yeah, the idea is to come in and just, I mean, if you want to do work, that's fine, but we encourage people to kind of unplug and enjoy the moment. What we try to do is keep about a dozen cats and at any given time. It's gone up to, I think the most we ever had in here at one time was 18. The vast majority of the cats are all adoptable. We are partnered with 2 different shelters, one out of Florenceville, Dunroman Stray and Rescue, and St. George, it's called the St. George Animal Shelter. And for those 2 shelters combined, we have collectively adopted out over 500 cats.
500 cats adopted. So when people come here, do a lot of people come here with the idea of I'm actually going to adopt a cat, or do they come with the idea that I'm just going to go play with the cats and then they fall in love?
That does happen. Typically it's fairly intentional, but there's a healthy margin of people who they just fall in love with one and it just kind of right timing and it just clicks and it works.
So when a cat comes here, what about those cats that aren't selected for adoption? Do they just stay here indefinitely?
That doesn't really happen. Like,
they just get adopted.
yeah,
That's
it's just a matter of time, really.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly some have stayed longer than others, but what we found is that there is a pet for everybody in a sense. So what we found is that the exposure we give actually helps some of the more conventionally unattractive cats get selected for adoption.
Tell me a bit about your background. What drew you to this type of business? Tell me about you.
I have a background in finance. So I'm a financial planner by trade and a mortgage broker.
Not connected to cat
Not
cafe,
connected to cats,
adoption.
no, not whatsoever. But I'm also a serial entrepreneur, so I'm also starting a pie company, for example. So if an idea intrigues me, I pounce on it again.
You pounce on it?
Yes.
Oh, there we go with the cat jokes.
Cats and puns are
Yeah.
a necessary mix.
Yeah.
My day job is really on the finance side, and then I'm always working through ideas on a new creation. This was the first one 4 years ago. The pie one's the most recent one. I don't know what's coming next, but there'll be something.
So you mentioned that you have a different day job. So that tells me that you must have, great employees here that operate your business for you when you can't be here. So how many employees do you have? Do you have full ownership? Tell me all about the structure.
So typically we have six-ish employees. We're looking to expand our hours pretty soon, but I don't really participate in the day-to-day management. That's mostly my wife, who actually, well, right now she's kind of on maternity leave. She has done most of the day-to-day management, whereas I do more of the business administration, the high-level decision-making, the vision, general direction of the company.
So let me get this straight. You are in the investment business, mortgage brokers, making pies, running this, have a new baby.
9-week-old son.
A 9-week-old son, and anything else on your plate?
I'm doing my master's in business part-time.
So you're a busy person. Maybe you
Fairly
need
busy.
these cats to give you comfort with all that on your plate.
They certainly help.
Yeah. Corey, tell me, who is your main clientele? Is it little children or is it anybody?
What I've come to find out is that it's really parent, typically mother plus child or children, tends to be the biggest demographic. Kids love this place. Young families ended up kind of being our primary market in terms of the cat room. The longer we're here, the more the coffee side of the business develops, and the more we're seeing kind of business people come in and do the business meetings, or old friends coming just to catch up, and really have nothing to do with the cat side. They're just coming for the coffee, which is nice to see.
So do you have a special brand of coffee that you use, or?
Yeah, so we actually support a local coffee roaster as the Whitney Coffee Company. So a lot of people are familiar with him because he's been at the Boyce market for the last 25 years or so. When I first opened, I was, I had to think, who am I going to get my coffee from? But it almost wasn't even a question. I went straight to him, both because his reputation, for one, he has a really good reputation in terms of quality, but two are actually from the same hometown, and he has been an absolute godsend as far as consulting, I guess, on the coffee side of the business. But he's actually also became a good friend and a mentor.
Tell me how you get your message out. How do you promote your business, the cafe and the cats?
Really, the main driver has been social media and word of mouth. And actually, our social media page, considering we've only been open for 4 years, we're actually one of the bigger Fredericton Facebook pages. Like,
That's amazing.
Period.
That's awesome. Tell me about your Facebook page. Is it mostly you posting things to entice people and invite people to come, or do your clients post there and share pictures?
So the great thing about social media is you get the best of both worlds. You do get that interaction. And what we try to do is really promote that interaction, and that's really, the cats are really take the cake there. It markets itself. You know, you post a cute cat and everybody's just gonna fall over for it, basically.
So most businesses have to give thought to competition. But what is your competition?
I don't consider other coffee shops to actually be my competition. At the end of the day, the environment we create, I think, is so unique that I don't actually see us having true competition.
Tell me about what you think your growth trajectory is going to look like. Will you have other locations? Will you expand this one? What are your plans?
So when I first opened this, I did build it with at least the potential to franchise or grow, or the branding we created is certainly scalable.
Corey, what would you say is the biggest success that you've had so far in your business?
It's a pretty low bar, but I think it's a pretty high bar, honestly. Surviving COVID. When I made the business plan, nobody's going to put pandemic in their business plan.
Right.
So we opened in October of 2018, so we were only a year and a half by the time full lockdown came into effect. If it hadn't have been for the business model of essentially the cat lounge, we wouldn't have survived.
So were you able to operate through COVID?
Under heavy restrictions, so it still hurt us really bad. But the government assistance was actually generous enough to help keep us
Get you
afloat
through it.
and get us through it.
Have you had any failures or bad decisions?
So it's certainly a lot of small failures and lessons to be learned on decision making and that sort of thing. But I think that every failure ultimately leads to learning, which then improves future decision making.
As a business owner, what's the most difficult thing that you've experienced so far?
Just the general unpredictable nature of business. And no matter what you do, you can never truly prepare for it. And that's why I really encourage people who are curious about business to really just jump in and try. You can plan yourself to death trying to get it perfect, and it doesn't matter because it won't be perfect anyways, because there are so many variables at play that you can't account for them all. So yeah, I say just dive in.
So you're, as you commented, a serial entrepreneur.
Yep.
With many new businesses that haven't even been thought of yet. But is being an entrepreneur what you thought it would be?
Probably not. It's a lot more, I would say, thankless than someone might anticipate. And I don't say that in the way of I'm here expecting praise from anybody. It's more from the perspective of I'm always kind of working in the shadows. The public don't see the work that goes on behind the scenes, and it's that work that is a monumental undertaking, and you're getting pulled constantly in a million different directions, and it's the mental work that really takes its toll.
The life of an entrepreneur is almost 24/7. Tell me about how that's impacted your work life and your family life.
And I had never heard that expression before, and it's actually very appropriate. I'll give you an example. Even last night, I was, so I work in finance on the side, as my main gig, and I was submitting mortgage applications at 10 o'clock last night. So I'm very much outside of the typical business schedule. But that's what I like about it. It keeps things dynamic. It keeps things interesting. And my wife is also self-employed, so she's a realtor. So between the two of us, we're both working non-traditional hours. Now that we're starting a family, childcare becomes a discussion to be had. And we're hoping to avoid having to use daycare by arranging our schedules accordingly. Since we're both self-employed, both create our own hours, hoping we can kind of tag team our scheduling to be able to accommodate that.
Here's another question. So you work with your wife.
Yes.
Do you think that is a good, positive contributor to good communication? Or do you think you become good communicators because you work together?
No, my wife and I really value communication just at a base level, so I think we already kind of had that seed planted, but I do see communication certainly evolving in tandem with the businesses. Mm-hmm. We're working in tandem on the cafe, but also in finance as well, because I'm a mortgage broker, she's a realtor, so we can share a client very effectively. And we have loved this ability to just kind of completely enmesh in our business lives and our personal lives together.
Welcome back to Business Insight Fredericton. I'm Krista Ross, CEO of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. My new friend Kruger and I welcome you back to the Purrfect Cup. Tell me how you feel about the economy and opportunities here in New Brunswick. What do you think?
So my outlook on this is probably different than a lot of people because I am very optimistic about it. I love being in this part of the country because all I see is opportunity everywhere because nothing has been done here. We are kind of a late bloomer to everything in a certain sense. Like our real estate economy is just starting to grow and catch up to the rest of the country. Even businesses, like you look at the Cat Cafe. I'm not the first cat cafe in Canada. I'm probably the 5th or 6th one, but I'm the first one in the Maritimes. And with the low cost of living, to me, this is the place to be.
Every business has its own regulatory issues or things that they deal with. What would be the unique things that you deal with in this business that other businesses wouldn't have to deal with?
The biggest thing was the health aspect of it because we did have to get, because we're a food establishment, so we are a class 4 food establishment because we process milk. So because we're class 4, we fall under fairly strict regulations by the health department, the same as a restaurant would. So we have a health inspector who had to essentially approve the initial business plan, and then they come in for regular, audits of our operation. So getting that first initial sign off was quite a job actually, because the way the health department views this business, they actually see it as two distinct, not businesses, but operations. So there's specific rules in place because of this space that we're in.
Did you have a difficult time, or was it fairly simple to overcome those hurdles initially?
It turns out I had an ally. When my application for this spot first hit the Department of Health, from what I'm told, the initial reaction was they didn't want to do it. And I had an ally in there who just thought it was a brilliant idea, so they kind of took it up and wanted to see how, our job as the health department shouldn't be we can do this or we can't do this. It should be how can we make this safe for the public. So we worked very closely, a lot of back and forth to make sure that we could accomplish that.
I'd like for you to tell me the best funny or crazy story that's happened since you opened.
And I remember it was the night before our formal opening inspection by the health department. So you have your checklist of everything they're gonna go through, and you gotta make sure it's done because if it comes back deficient, you can't open. And that's a pretty big deal because you're trying to pump up the public for your grand opening. So if it falls through, that could really screw up your plans. And I remember the night before, we're just going through the checklist, making sure everything is perfect. So there was two things that kind of came up. So the first thing that came up was in between the the joints of the concrete, it wasn't fully filled in with whatever material they would use to fill in those cracks. So my mentor told me, well, if you can't clean this properly, health department could arguably say that's a problem. You need to do something about this. So at almost 10 o'clock at night, I'm over at Home Depot buying stuff to do crack filling in our cafe. Finish that, I come in, do one last sweep of the cat litter room, and I notice there's no hand washing sink. So I reach out to my health department contact. I say, hey, if there's a hand wash sink in there, what happens? It's just like, you can't open. My inspection was scheduled for 9 or 10 the next morning, so I have to figure out to get an emergency hand wash sink installed. I managed to pull some strings and get that hand wash sink installed in time for the inspection the next morning. But let's just say I didn't sleep very well that night.
Well, those are the types of things that entrepreneurs go through. Corey, tell me, what is the best advice that you have received in your entrepreneurial journey?
Can't remember if I received this advice or if I kind of just came up with it over time, but I think it's probably one of the most important ones, and it's this notion that done is better than perfect, because you'll never reach perfect.
That's great advice. What advice would you give someone who was starting out on their entrepreneurial journey? Would you have other advice that you might tell them that has come from your experience?
Failure is inevitable. And you have to be able to swallow those failures and cast the pride aside.
What are you most proud of thus far?
Probably that I've managed to create a lifestyle through entrepreneurship that really resonates with my values, and having that not the free time, but that inherent flexibility in what I do, to not only conduct my business when I want, but how I want. I would never have guessed, like, talk about fringe benefits, I would never have guessed that, owning a cafe would be so useful in my financial business. Because where do you think I'm hosting all my business meetings? Now, how much credibility does it give me sitting in front of a client to say, hey, we're sitting in my cafe, let's talk about your finances? So it just gives me a lot of credibility in the financial world, which is a highly competitive environment. You have to have a way to stand out from the crowd, and I think I successfully do that.
So what do you see as the next step in the journey of the Purrfect Cup?
Well, we're currently in the middle of a kind of a revamp of the business. So we're actually sitting in part of it right now, and I've started to do some changes on the cafe side as well, but there's more substantial changes coming. So we are investing a lot in upgrading the business, both from an aesthetic point of view, but also from an operations point of view. So I'm currently planning kind of a 2.0 of our cafe.
Thank you very much for your time today. It's been a great conversation, and now I'm going to go snuggle some cats. So thank you.
Thank you.
We're always looking for great companies with a unique story to feature on the show. If you have suggestions, please get in touch with us.